All right, thank you very much for joining our interview for today. And I'm glad that we have another person who is majoring in computer science and who is expected to graduate next semester.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Could you briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
Yep. So, hi everyone. My name is Sai. I'm a junior here at Rutgers University studying computer science. I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and I'm super excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty cool that as we see, like on your jacket, we see Twitch, it seems like you're somewhat related to the company, right? So let's just talk about your major. How did you find computer science as something that you want to do and then pursue for your future career?
Yeah, so growing up, I always played a lot of video games. I pretty much grew up on Pokemon, so that's something that really introduced me to the whole idea of like technology and computers. And then I also happened to go to a high school that offered a lot of computer science classes. So I had the opportunity of taking 6 different computer science classes while in high school. So that gave me a huge exposure to the topic as a whole. And I also did competitive robotics while in high school. So basically like programming robots to compete against each other, which was a lot of fun, but it was very hard. So that's kind of how my origins in computer science began. And super excited to be doing it today.
Yeah, that's amazing. It seems like since when you were in high school, you were able to get exposed to different technology, computer science classes. And I think this is one of the questions that a lot of people have when it comes to should I choose computer science as a future career, right? Let's say like you are a person who doesn't have as much exposure like in high school about like computer science or technology. As a computer science major student, do you think those experiences are like necessary or almost like must for someone to pursue computer science as a major?
I'm going to say absolutely not. I think the one thing you really need to have as a computer science major or a computer programmer in general is persistence. I think as long as you put in the time and effort and really continue trying, you can't give up easily. That's really what makes a good computer programmer, computer scientist, and software engineer. And I will say, like from personal example, I have met people that have been coding like way less than I have that are way better than me. So just anecdotally, but it's definitely possible to make it.
Yeah, I think that was pretty cool that even without having any knowledge in computer science, as long as you're persistent, being consistent with your work, you can still be a great computer scientist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear for a lot of people.
Yeah,
I feel
sure.
like, yeah, so that was very cool. And as a computer scientist major student, right, there are definitely things that you learn when you're in college. What are some of the most important things that you learn while being a computer science major student?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing that you learn is really just computer programming in general. Computer science as a major is a theoretical discipline at its core. So this basically means that you focus on the theory or like the design or analysis of like software systems or algorithms. But computer programming and like coding itself is very applicable to a lot of different jobs and career paths. So if you want to be like a game developer, you're going to need to know how to program. If you're going to want to be a software engineer, you need to know how to program. A bunch of different jobs that require it. So I think that is probably the most important thing for anyone that's planning to pursue computer science.
Yeah, I think we talked about very briefly before the interview. You said you had a lot of opportunities to interview until this point to get an internship or a job positions. If you were to give a recommendations or tips for people who are preparing to do an interview for internships, what are some of the recommendations that you would give for those people?
So I think the most important thing for internships in general is to kind of do stuff on your own outside the classroom. So I think this not only helps you in like passing your interviews, but also helps you in getting your interviews. So one thing that I did was I built a lot of like side projects. So this could be anything from like a simple game to a website. Last year, while I was dorming, my roommate and I used to play a lot of Sudoku, like competing against each other. So what I did was I created a virtual reality Sudoku solver. So basically you could take out your phone, you could scan a Sudoku board, and it would overlay all the solutions to you. So it's basically cheating, but it helped me win a lot too. And but I guess the idea is like it really helped me get another talking point for my interviews. And I think that's really important part for interviews in general. You really want to be able to talk about different stuff and really show that you're able to understand all the material that you're supposed to know.
I think it's very important that you talk about something that is interesting. And when you want to talk about something interesting, like you said, you have to have something that you worked on that is
Exactly.
interesting, right? So yeah, I think that was a very great point. In terms of like taking classes in college for a computer science major, what were some of the hardest course that you take?
Oh, that's a good question. I will say computer science in general is not very easy. So a lot of the classes you take will be difficult. You will have to put a lot of time in. You'll have to plan ahead. But I'd say some of the most difficult classes were data structures, which is pretty much like it's mostly considered like a weed out course. It's what gets people to, unfortunately, have to rethink their major choice. But I think as long as you put in the work, as long as you really, really study outside of the classroom as well, you can definitely make it past it. I think that's probably like the one class that stands out. Of course, if you take certain electives like operating systems, I just had a final exam for that. Pretty sure I failed, but that's okay. But yeah, like a lot of the classes are difficult, but as long as you put in the time and effort, you will be able to succeed for sure.
Let's just get to talk about what are some of the internships that you did as a computer science major student, and what are some of the recommendations that you can give for those who want to get an internship for a computer science major?
Okay, yeah, so I've had a couple different internships so far. So my first internship was in high school. I interned at a startup called Leverton. Another internship that I had was at Bloomberg. It's like a financial services company. And then I had one more recently, last summer, at AWS or Amazon. And then I also worked as a contractor at Twitch. Wow. And then this coming summer, I will be working at Riot Games as an engineering intern.
Wow.
Yeah, so a bunch of different things.
That's a lot of internships.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot
and
more.
You're a junior right now, so
Yeah.
It seems like you're already like age 25 or something like that. Okay, that's great. Since like high school year, you were able to get an opportunity to work in startup. Is there anything that you want to share for maybe those high school students who want to possibly get an internship in a startup?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want to say one thing that I really think everyone should keep in mind is to not count themselves out. I see this time and time again with a lot of my friends. They will, as smart as they are, they will still think, like, they'll still worry that they aren't good enough for the job. So they'll count themselves out by not even applying. So with this in mind, I think you should apply to everything that you can find. It might be a lot, but as long as you keep applying to companies, you will get a greater chance of like, getting an internship. And that's how I got mine. Like I just kept applying to companies because I really wanted to try out what software engineering was like. And by chance, they happened to pick up my resume and I happened to pass the interviews.
Time to time I hear you just have to apply a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that you mentioned was very important because a lot of people think that maybe they're not good enough. But by just having that thought, it's not good for you, you know? I feel like it's not just about getting an internship, it's also for just yourself. I think being confident and then just making sure that I can be the best person for everything that I do. I think that could be a mindset that could help you. And even you, like you said, that helped you to get an internship by just applying everything. And maybe I can be qualified, right? What's the harm for applying and then, even if you were to not get accepted, what's like the harm to you, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you spend time for it, but that's it.
Exactly, and you come back stronger too.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure there's a lesson you learn as a time when you apply and then you fail. There's always learning that goes into it, so I think that's a very good point that you told people that it's very important that you apply a lot, but also at the same time, you gotta think that you are a good candidate. I think that's something that's very important to be very confident in yourself. Yeah. So yeah, to get many different internships. I know you have to go through like an interview, a lot of like applications and stuff like that. What are some of the tips that you want to tell people who are preparing for internship positions? Yeah,
so I would say it's kind of like a 3-step process to getting an internship. So one, you have to make your resume. And obviously to make your resume, you need to do stuff that you can put on your resume. So this could be in the form of like clubs or, as I mentioned earlier, like side projects, like the Sudoku solver I made. anything that you're really interested in, you could build it and you can put on your resume, and that'll be a great talking point for not only the interviews, but also for recruiters to see your resume and believe that you have the skills necessary for the job. So that's like the first part, or the first two parts really.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part is actually passing the interviews. So a lot of software engineering interviews, which is what I do, software engineering, a lot of these interviews have you they basically give you a coding question, like an algorithmic coding question, and you have to solve it on the spot, and also explain the thought process, code it out, and make sure it runs pretty perfectly.
Mm.
So a lot of that is practicing data structures and algorithms. That's what I mentioned was the weed out class earlier, the difficult class in computer science major. So you really want to make sure that you are as good as you can possibly be in that class. As long as you can do really well in the class and you can consistently practice and complete algorithms, then you will get a lot more experience in like interviewing, and you'll also be able to pass interviews and hopefully get an internship. There's a great website called LeetCode, which is basically a website that provides you with algorithm problems and kind of has you solve them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really great resource to basically just practice for interviews.
So I guess two main thing is you got to build great resume,
Mm-hmm.
and it's practice for that
Yeah.
interview questions for
Absolutely.
code. Is there any like memorable experience that you had from any of the internships that you had before? Maybe some lesson you learned while you did internship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the most important thing is that internships or any experience beyond the classroom is very different from what you might learn in school. School is a very closed environment, so you don't really get an idea of what it's like working a job. One example is, so at Twitch, I basically was in charge of a certain product, and this product has 20 to 30,000 users every day.
Wow.
So you kind of get an idea of like how much of an impact it has on the company and how many people will be using your work.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, you really want to make sure everything is as perfect as it can be,
Mm.
and you really want to have your customers in mind when kind of coding and working on your project. So you really don't want to cut any corners, as you might do in school.
Mm.
So yeah, it's basically just making sure you are developing as properly as possible.
Mm. Yeah, like you said, a lot of, when you're in school, you can cut corners and sometimes you just get it passed, right?
Yeah.
No one really recognizes it, but if you go outside of work and then if you're in a bigger situation when it matters more,
Mhm.
then what you do count. Every single thing that you do counts, and
Yeah.
building that discipline of making sure that you're producing great work, I think that's a
Exactly.
great,
That's
yeah.
perfect mindset.
Perfect mindset. Yep. I think last question would be, if you were to give a recommendation or any advice for those high school students who are coming into college with computer science major in mind, what would you say for them?
That's a great question. I think, I said this earlier, but I really, really am a strong believer in going beyond the classroom. And this doesn't have to be in the form of internships. It could be, you could join a club. You could join a club like that's related to computer science. You could take courses online that are outside of, that are in computer science. You can get an internship. You could do research. There's a lot of different avenues that you can take. But I think as long as you're really going beyond your classes and really trying to learn the material, just making sure that you're able to learn as much as possible, that's probably the key to succeeding in computer science. As a discipline, it's kind of a discipline where things are rapidly changing.
Mm-hmm.
So you always have to be up to date, and if you aren't willing to learn as much as possible that you can, you will have a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
So just make sure you're willing to learn and also get diverse experiences, because you never know what you're going to like until you really try it.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great advice for a lot of people, to not only just stay in your comfort zone, but you gotta go beyond your comfort zone and then try out new things, having that new experience, because you don't know where you will end up, right?
Yeah, that's
after
very
trying
true.
out many different things.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think those are great advices, and thank you very much for giving great insight for many future computer scientists
Yeah,
who may
happy to
consider
help.
to choose computer science major in colleges. And yeah, thank you for sharing your experience
Absolutely.
during interviews. So yeah, I hope that this video helps for a lot of students, but Also at the same time, when you get to our position, I hope you can do the same thing, helping others. So yeah, we'll be back.